Number 2.
Gambling Harm Reduction Amendment Bill, Committee stage.
I declare the House in committee for consideration of the Gambling Harm Reduction Amendment Bill. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker. Evening. Members, the House and Committee on the Gambling Harm Reduction Amendment Bill. Members, earlier today the House gave leave for the committee to hold one debate on the Gambling Harm Reduction Amendment Bill and to commence voting on all questions at 9:30. The committee will report once voting is complete and the House will adjourn once it has received the report. There are some consequences of that decision that I will inform you about now. Where there are clauses for which no amendments are proposed and which are not to be considered for a personal vote, the chairperson will group the clauses together for a single vote. There are a number of questions that the Speaker has indicated may be decided by a personal vote. If personal votes are called for, the first one will receive a 7-minute bill. All subsequent personal votes will receive a 1-minute bill. So the question is that clauses 1 to 4 and 11 to 19 stand part, and all amendments proposing new clauses be agreed to.
Mr. Chairman.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the House for taking what I think is a logical approach to dealing with these as a group, rather than trying to work our way through them one at a time and in order when that could take weeks and weeks. Mr. Chairman, I'd like first of all, and what I'd like to do is to run through in order that they come up in the bill, the amendments which I'm proposing. The first one has to do with when venues are transferred. Now, what we know, Mr. Chairman...
Order. Sorry.
It's all right. He's on his way back.
You can't leave the...
Yeah.
You can't leave here.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that.
If you do, someone else...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I assume we're going to have some flexibility over time on this anyway. Mr. Chairman, the first point is when venues are transferred, what the practice appears to be is that the transfer occurs from areas that are relatively wealthy to the areas that have high foot traffic and with areas of tendency to gambling. And what tends to happen is that transfers will only occur where people think there's going to be more gambling. And what my amendment does in the first amendment on supplemental to paper 291 reduces to no more than 75% when there is a transfer. So there's got to be a drop in the number of machines as that transfer occurs in order to try and offset the increased take that is likely to happen as a result of transfer. Because, of course, if transfers, people wouldn't transfer the machines if they didn't think they were going to get more money. The next one, and I know this will be of interest to especially metropolitan members, is that when pokie machines are transferred, they can only be transferred to areas with lower, that may be transferred in an area that has a higher deprivation, may not be transferred to an area that has a higher deprivation level. So what we're saying in supplemental paper 292 is that can you move your pokie machines from poor areas to rich areas, but the practice of focusing pokie machines into poorer areas, especially when you have a cap that is taking them down, is to stop. Mr. Speaker, supplementary order paper 296 is relatively simple. What it says is that an increasing proportion over a decade, moving from 40 to 50% of the takings should be distributed. So what we're saying is that as a minimum, the amount that goes back out to the community of the profits that are made should move, first of all, to 40% in the financial year after next, and then go through to a figure of 50%. And Mr. Speaker, frankly, that's one which I've done relatively carefully with quite a lot of consultation, and it's a bit soft, but it's a test for members, and it only happens 1% a year. Mr. Speaker, the next one that I would like to refer to is 298, which makes the pre-commitment arrangements mandatory. So the objective there is that people decide before they start gambling how much they can afford to lose. They make that decision, and that's the amount that they're allowed to lose. They can't keep on coming back for more and more. And there'll be tracking arrangements in order to ensure that. Now, I just might say, Mr. Chairman, without you bringing it to debate, I understand some of the arrangements that are in the Waikato, some very good technology developed in the Waikato as far as player tracking is concerned, with biometric recognition for people. Mr. Speaker, 299 deals with the matter of trustees and directors' remuneration and sets $100,000 for an individual trustee or a director. Now, this is not people who are employed. This is not setting someone's wages, but effectively the fees or the honorarium is the wrong word at this sort of level, but the amount that can be paid out to trustees or directors. And the reason for this, Mr.
Singularly.
Sorry?
Singularly.
Each, as an individual. And the reason for this is that the committee has heard evidence, and it's come back by way of questions, that some people are getting $200,000 taken from the poorest people in New Zealand, not to work on this stuff, but just to sit on the board. And that, Mr. Speaker, is something which is Mr. Chairman, is just outrageous. Moving through a much tighter requirement to account for proceeds and payments, and a requirement to have an integrated public health approach, a requirement for territorial local authorities to have a sinking lid policy. We're not saying what it should be. We're not saying it should go at a particular level in this particular amendment, but just that they have one, that they debate the issue and they make a movement, even if it is something which is very minor. Mr. Speaker, number 303 is one which I think is important, and that is to put into the gambling legislation an objective of reducing the number of gaming machines in New Zealand to 10,000 by the year 2025. So it's a medium to longer term objective to drop out about 35% of the current number of gaming machines. Now, Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to pretend that's going to result in a massive drop-off in the money going through the pokies, because these machines keep on getting more and more attractive and flasher, and they take bigger coins and they do all that sort of thing. But, Mr. Chairman, what this would do would be to reduce the number of those machines. Mr. Chairman, the last one, the one that's actually had a little more publicity, is one which is on number 326, which would result in what I'm describing as a pokies pause. Currently, this House, in its wisdom, decided in order to deal with liquor abuse, we would close outlets from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. Mr. Chairman, and because it was felt that that would help break the problems of addiction, it would stop some of the harm. Mr. Chairman, my view is that if it's good enough for liquor to have a break from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m, then it is good enough for venues which have pokey machines to have a break for the same period. The idea of people staying all night, night after night, in places like this, and frankly, New Zealanders who are doing that are often the poorest people, the people who are desperate, the people who can least afford it. And, Mr. Chairman, as a result of that, we have people losing their homes, getting them out for 4 hours, hopefully getting them home, hopefully getting them to a point where they can have a sleep and they can consider these matters is something which I think is a very worthy thing to do. If we do it for booze, then there's even more of a reason for doing it for gaming, Mr. Chairman.
Any speakers?
Mr. Chair.
Oh, Te Aroha Flepple.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.